CIT President Lawrence Cruciana joins us this week to sift through news from Axcient, N-able, Trend Micro, QuoteWerks, and the importance of documentation from an M&A perspective, plus a special guest interview with Webroot Security Intelligence Director Grayson Milbourne on the latest threats and countermeasures. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 217. Tell me about the Toofah. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode number 217. My name is Matt Whitlock, Technology Editor, Online Director, and your host for this show. And I'm joined, of course, with an awesome co-host as well. He is the Executive Editor here at ChannelPro. Keeps the planes and trains in and out, coming in and out on schedule all day long, each and every day, because I guess we are in the freight industry as well with moving cargo around. Please welcome Executive Editor Rich Freeman.
I spend more time on planes than trains. The trains are pretty much taking care of themselves, but maybe I'm helping out with the planes.
That's always a good thing. Do we do a lot of mass cargo moving, Rich?
Yes, actually, in addition to being the channel's #1 source of information, the SMB channel's #1 source of information, we are also one of the world's largest cargo shippers. Little known fact about ChannelPro.
Well, that sounds very interesting and intriguing. So, folks, if you're trying to get something from point A to point B, just let us know. And Rich will throw it in the back of his car or in his suitcase and take it around for you. So, Rich, I did not say who this show is for or what it's about. I'm going to let you take the honors this time. Tell those listening or watching what ChannelPro Weekly is all about and who it's for.
Well, we call it ChannelPro Weekly because it's for the channel pros. And who are the channel pros? Well, that would be the MSPs, the solution providers, the VARs, the integrators, the system builders. If you are providing technology services and or products to SMBs, you have found the right place to be.
How about it? Now they know, and now they're ready to roll. And Rich, we are not alone today either. We have an awesome guest lined up to join us today. He is the founder and president of Corporate Information Technologies, also known as CIT. He leads CIT's cybersecurity business practice, focusing on businesses that handle high value and regulated information. He's a sought-after presenter on information risk and information security topics at numerous conferences across a wide variety of industries. Please welcome back to the show, the one, the only, the awesome Lawrence Cruciana. Welcome, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's great to be here. And Rich, I learned something already. I always learn something on the show, but now I learned that not only are you the leading source of information, but you also have a massive logistics network. So I'll keep that in mind.
Yes, UPS and FedEx, look out. We're coming behind you. Here we go. Lawrence, it is awesome to have you on. Before we dive too much into you, I want to say that it's great that you're back. But Rich, we also are not going to see Lawrence only today. We are going to see him at an event coming up very, very, very soon. Tell us about that.
You know what? As we record this, it's coming up in less than a week. Before I forget, I will warn our audience that because of this event that Matt and Lawrence and I will be at, we're going to skip a week on the show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode for you. But next week, the four of us are all going to be in Newark, New Jersey at ChannelPro's first in-person SMB Forum Conference of 2022. Still time to get in, folks, as far as I know. And Matt can tell you a little bit more about how to do that and give you a discount code you can use. But you're going to want to be there. We have awesome sessions about employer recruitment, which we're kind of presenting game show style, but a very serious topic and a pain point for pretty much everybody out in the channel there right now. We have a session with some real life suggestions on how to make money in Microsoft Azure, a phenomenal hands-on workshop delivered by the experts at JS Shine Group, JS Shine Group, Janet Shine's organization, about social media marketing. You're going to go home having practiced some of those techniques with some real applicable ideas that you can put into effect as soon as you're back at your desk. We have a very interesting conversation that we're also kind of presenting in an entertaining format about M&A, which is a huge thing right now. And last but not least, I will be moderating a session that we're calling the Security Slam, which is all about security storytelling. Instructive stories. You are going to learn from the experiences of security experts. And one of those experts who will be on stage with me telling a story is our own Lawrence Cruciana.
You're not going to want to miss it, folks. You are not going to want to miss it. Oh, so Lawrence, are you excited about this?
I'm excited for it. And you know, the agenda online does not do it justice. I think you need Rich to record that, because the content is incredible. It's timely as always. I'm super excited to be a part of it, and I'm really glad to be here with you guys today.
You know, and Lawrence will attest too. We definitely try to mix it up and keep it fun as well. It's one of the things that people like about our shows is it's not necessarily a snooze dry fest all day long. Right, Lawrence?
Not at all. I mean, today is going to be amazing.
Absolutely. So, folks, no ChannelPro Weekly next week because of this, but ChannelPro Weekly is in person. Why don't we say that? Join us in Newark, New Jersey, or anywhere. If you're anywhere in the New York metro area, you have no excuse. Get online, get registered like today. There are still spots available. I'm going to give you a discount code. We're going to put a graphic up on the screen here that's got a QR code on it. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello, hit the like button, leave a comment and a good rating. But scan that code. That is going to take you to a place where you can directly register for the Newark show. If you're listening on your phone or on your tablet on the go to channelproforum.com/Newark. And that will take you right to the registration page. Use promo code CPVIP. And that will get you in the door for free. And believe me, it may be free, but you're going to take away a lot. We've got lots of great info, as Rich was saying. We've got prizes. We've got some all kinds of stuff. You're gonna walk away gratified and fulfilled that you were there. So go and register right away. Lawrence, awesome to have you here. For those who may not have caught you on a previous show, tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me back. It is great to be here. Truly among the people I respect and love this content and love this channel. So I have been in the channel for now over 20 years. That's all I'm going to admit to at this point, but for a very long time. And I am the founder of Corporate Information Technologies. We are an MSSP, but we do everything from security assessment, analysis, and of course have a managed services practice that focuses on organizations that have high value information assets or have some type of regulatory compulsion around cybersecurity. So a lot of critical manufacturing, financial services, etc. And I have been in the channel for a very, very long time, back before they ever had the term MSP or TSP or MSSP. I get lost in the channel acronyms and three-letter soups that are out there. But been doing this for a very long time. I have my focus is really in the cybersecurity side of the business, in understanding the regulation, trying to decipher that, make application into assessments in our adversarial simulation practice, and working with a lot of really great people, trying to keep the bad guys out and the blinking lights blinking.
So when you got in the industry, like what was, I don't, this probably wasn't your goal when you first started. What was the original vision when you got into technology? And PCs?
That's a great question, Matt. When I first got into this business, I got into it by accident first. I think it's a very similar story arc to many that I know and respect in this business. Got into it kind of on accident. And it was the early 90s. And so all the cool kids were starting up tech companies, and we were going to grow this thing and then take it public and buy an island or something. Now at the time I didn't know what that meant, didn't have any idea what going public meant, but then again I'm pretty sure that Mr. Zuckerberg didn't either, and he clearly executed better than I did, because we are not a publicly traded company. The thing that really kept me in it, has kept me in it all this time, are the people. The technology is amazing. I think it's absolutely incredible what we are able to do, but really the people, not just the technical people, because I love being amongst us geeks. Where we can talk in numbers and acronyms and letters and really gain joy of that, but being able to take a business challenge and turn that into a reality using technology. That's really kind of the long and short of it for me.
So when you said you got into technology, what was were you like, we're going to build an application, we're going to do PC service? What was it?
I was, my background is actually in optical physics. High peak power pulsed laser systems. And so that was the world I was going to go into. Really in optical communications. So the work that I was doing before this was understanding and quantifying modal dispersion in fiber optic systems, and building fast Fourier transform filters to take multi-mode fiber and allow it to operate like single mode fiber. So that was a million years ago, and the story arc goes along the line that I got the company I was working for. I was working in a clean room doing some really cool work with these high energy lasers and diffractive optics. Just loving that. I had gotten these fledgling Windows machines talking with these Apple machines, like Apple, not Mac, Apple. With Unix machines. And so because I got this network talking, I was some kind of technology wizard, TCP IP, and through a kind of a very fortunate series of events, I was given the opportunity to help a related company to that which I was working for, build out they wanted email. An email was a brand new thing. They wanted email. And so my boss sent me to go give them email. And unfortunately for that email turned out to be 90 something locations, no wide area network to speak of. There were no real computer systems. And so that is the beginning of this, an integration company that I started. And now, over many years later, we've done work with Fortune 500, DOE, a lot of enterprise businesses, and then into their, out of necessity, into their suppliers. Our customers were saying, well, hey, can you help our suppliers? Which were all SMB, and found that the SMB space is so much more agile, that you're working so much closer to the decision maker. And that really brought me to where I am today, and frankly fueled a passion that I have for the SMB, because there is such incredible passion and innovation in the SMB. It just doesn't feel the same as it does in enterprise.
So with a background in high energy lasers, when you saw Austin Powers, did you seriously consider trying to take the world, hold the world like Ransom, or attach lasers to sharks?
Maybe I missed an opportunity there with the first ransomware, but no. I think probably the most influential point for me was the movie Real Genius.
Is that which one is that? That is
Val Kilmer. That's
a Val Kilmer movie. That's right.
A bunch of geeks, and they're playing around with lasers, and I'm not going to lie, it was pretty amazing to see lasers bouncing around a school campus, and I still draw inspiration from that.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see you holding a cat right here, and communicating with world governments and demanding ransoms.
Wasn't it a hairless cat?
No, was it a hairless one?
I think so.
Yeah, it's been a few minutes since I've seen that movie. I think I need to go back and refresh that.
Awesome stuff. Rich, were you a big take over the world kind of person when you got started? What was your your inspiration and desire?
Just to avoid getting taken over by. I never harbored that aspiration. No, I just wanted to make sure somebody who did couldn't get at me.
Very cool. So Lawrence, so I also understand that when you're not trying to take over the world with big lasers, which we all know that you do in secret, I also understand that you're kind of into aviation, learning to fly. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So your research skills are incredible. Pretty awesome. Really started a number of years ago with drones. and just fell in love with just the freedom and the technical wizardry that is that, but really just a high degree of, again, it's a technical field. Aviation's a technical field. That, so just a kind of passion with drones and how they worked, and this great, amazing new thing, combined with my love of math, and the book Checklist Manifesto. I think the last time I was on, I think I mentioned Checklist Manifesto. But the fact that statistically how safe commercial aviation is, and how just amazing how the number of moving parts and variables, and yet they still deliver this incredible safety record, that made me want to learn more, and it just hasn't stopped since then.
It's a really cool hobby, and hopefully it is something that works out well for you. And you know what? You might want to also consider combining your knowledge of lasers with airplanes and attaching lasers to airplanes. And
I'm 100% sure that there's a FAA restriction against that.
Well, but that doesn't mean you have to follow it. No, I'm kidding. You should.
I will say I willingly follow all of the FAA's guidelines.
Probably a smart thing to say, especially when you're being recorded. Lawrence, awesome to have you here. It's going to be a really great show. I'm glad that you're on. And boy, what a show do we have coming up. We've got some news that we're going to talk about. I know we got some BDR news. We're going to talk about Trend Micro and cyber insurance. We're going to talk about QuoteWerks. We're going to talk about a story on IT documentation. We've got an amazing interview coming up with Grayson Milbourne. He's the Security Intelligence Director at Webroot. That is definitely something you're going to want to tune in for later on in the show. And that and a whole lot more, folks. So strap in. It's going to be a wild ride. Here we go. Rich, we got a couple stories we're going to kind of talk about together, I think. So it's BDR related. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about these stories together because there's a news element, but also kind of a trend element that I really only kind of became aware of this week. I had two conversations, one with Axcient and one with N-able on the same day earlier this week, within a few hours of them, and they both made the same point to me, which was something interesting. We can get maybe some input on it from Lawrence. So let's just start with the news. The news element here is from Axcient. They announced this week that they have added a feature called Cloud Auto Verify to their direct-to-cloud BDR product. Now, their on-premises BDR products have had a feature called Auto Verify for some time. It confirms the integrity and recoverability of backup files. It lets you spin up test environments, recovery environments, and make sure that's going to work the way you want it to in the event of an outage. That functionality has not been available on their direct-to-cloud product until this week. It is available now. It was actually apparently on the roadmap. This was something that they've been planning for some time to add to that product. They accelerated the timetable on that because a lot of MSPs were saying, we really like the direct-to-cloud product, but man, we could really use this auto verify feature. And so that is available now. There was also, in conjunction with that, they made an updated Axcient to the X360 Recover Manager, which is the administration console, both for the on-premises versions of X360 Recover. That's their BDR system. So both the on-premises and the direct-to-cloud. In that administration portal now, you get some reporting ability around verification results that wasn't available before. If you are a user of the direct-to-cloud product, you have already got Cloud Auto Verify in place right now. They rolled that out a little bit earlier, and they enabled it by default. So it's up and running now and available to you. If you don't want it, you have to go in and shut it off, basically. And with that, now that, obviously Axcient is going to be making enhancements and upgrades and changes to both their on-premises editions of X360 Recover and the direct-to-cloud version. But now that Cloud Auto Verify is out there, both the direct-to-cloud and the appliance-based on-prem editions of the product are pretty much at feature parity. This was the last big gap that they wanted to close. So I said that's the news piece of this, but as I said, there's sort of a trend piece to it too, because as I was talking to the folks at Axcient, I just kind of asked them, they introduced X360 Recover Direct to Cloud late in 2020. It was October 2020. And I was just kind of curious, what kind of momentum are you seeing around that product? How do the sales of that product compare to the on-premises systems? Because there are obvious pros and cons with direct to cloud, which we can get into just a little bit in a moment here. And they said, actually, not only has this been selling well, it's been, since its introduction, it has been the hottest seller in their portfolio of all the products that they sell. And according to Ben Nowacki, who's in charge of the product organization over there, it is probably the fastest selling product in the last 5 years that they've introduced. And again, MSPs were kind of asking for this auto verify functionality because they very much are coming to Axcient and companies like it and saying, we want to go direct to cloud. We don't want to have to deal with on-premises hardware. We don't want to have to deal with the cost of procuring and installing that hardware. We don't want to deal with the cost of managing that hardware. We don't want to deal with the cost of hiring people, technicians, to manage that hardware. So let's get out of the hardware business. Axcient is one of several vendors with a direct-to-cloud product that had what they call it local caching, but they have a feature basically that has sort of standby copies of images available locally, so that you're not, because the knock on direct-to-cloud is that spinning up a recovery environment can take longer than it does in an appliance-based environment. They can kind of mitigate some of that with this local cache functionality. You'll see that with other vendors. MSPs, according to Axcient, really don't worry about that so much anymore, and they like the security of that arrangement as well, because that's one less endpoint on site with the customer to worry about, and that could potentially get attacked. And so, like 3 hours after I had that conversation with Axcient, I'm talking with N-able. And it was a conversation about their backup products and their backup strategy, which is something that they're really going to be focusing on a lot now. As I kind of kicked things off in the article I wrote about N-able yesterday, you hear N-able, you probably think RMM, PSA. They've got 2 RMMs. They got a PSA platform. Obviously, they have all sorts of security functionality, some of which they've created themselves. Some of it is in partnership with companies like SentinelOne and DNS Filter, but they do backup as well. It is 100% direct to cloud in their case. They don't have appliances, never have, never will. And I got the exact same input from Chris Groot, who is the general manager of their backup organization over there. And he said, basically, this is what MSPs want now. This is the preferred model. And at least as far as I'm aware, if you go back again to October 2020, when Axcient introduces its product, I don't know that that was the case. But to hear it twice from 2 prominent vendors in that BDR space in the same day kind of tells me this is something that's changed in the BDR world in the last couple of years.
So let me turn it over to Lawrence first. I think we could talk about BDR just as a whole. Is probably one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself in the cybersecurity world, right? Like having backups is the big thing to fight ransomware, right? Because then if you're not making payments, then there's no money, and hopefully we'll have less of it. But let's talk a little bit first about what Axcient and N-able is doing here and what you think of it.
Well, I was going to say, I think I think in the past, having backups was absolutely the key. But I would argue that having backups and verifying those backups, and that they work, is arguably more important than just having the backups. So I think that this is it's a fantastic change. Having solid backups, having immutable backups, and having backups that are not physically connected to or logically connected to the same infrastructure, to the same client environment, that really is the win when it comes to ransomware. I think unfortunately though, most of the ransomware threat actors, first thing they go after is enumerating what the environment looks like, then moving into finding where the data backups are. So they're very smart. They know all of the names that every MSP uses, every enterprise uses, and they're looking for those things to go neutralize or corrupt or take them offline. Ultimately, you typically that there's about a 14 to 17 day dwell time in which the ransomware threat actors are in an environment. So having that direct cloud or having generational backups that can go beyond the time when the initial infection vector happened is a huge win. So having that direct to cloud or having a cloud recovery environment that you can spin up and then evaluate for what the indications of compromise, the IOCs, are for the specific threat actor, how do they get in, is a huge win. That's a huge win. So you're not restoring something back that might have a threat actor already resident inside of that backup image.
And you said 17 days is the average. How far out should MSPs be storing customer backups? Months? I
think that's really around the risk profile of the company. They're in days past, right? There were these month-end backups and year-end backups and whatnot, and that methodology really has kind of faded to some degree. But really, the 3, 2, 1, 0 or a grandfather, father, son, that generational backup is still paramount. NIST offers some excellent guidance that helps adjust with risk adjustment out on the NIST website. But really, ultimately, it turns into the risk tolerance and profile that the MSP and ultimately the customer have, and if there's any long-term data retention. Typically, what we see is that there's 2 sets of backups at a minimum. One that is used for rapid recovery. Rich, the point you made around that local cache, right? That you can get something up very quickly, because not everything is a ransomware event. Not everything is a cybersecurity event. Sometimes people delete files or a service gets corrupted. So you have that rapid recovery set of data, and then you have something that's off-site, that's not administratively connected, and that set of data, you can have much longer term retention, whether that be 30 days, 90 days, or even longer.
So in your opinion, we're starting to hear about direct to cloud VDR as kind of being more of the preferred model being adopted by MSPs. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of your preference as well?
I think it all comes down to the RTO, the recovery time objective, of the business. Every business is different. Every SMB is different. I think, Rich, you hit the nail on the head when you said that the recovery time has kind of been what the dig is in the cloud model. But it makes a whole lot of sense because now we don't have something else to update that's on site. We don't have another piece of equipment we've got to deal with on site. In the smallest businesses, that equipment, the cost of that equipment, the cost to the MSP, the cost to the customer, may be a deterrent from them actually implementing a proper backup methodology. And so that allows the elimination of the budget concern for yet another piece of equipment that is going to eventually have to be replaced, that is going to need maintenance, that is going to need updates. So it really can accelerate that adoption. So from that perspective, I would be very supportive of it. But again, I would drive everything back to RTO. How quickly can you recover the data, and verifying that you can recover the data to an acceptable point inside the time that the customer will allow.
For sure. Rich, anything else you want to add?
Just a few really quick things for folks out in the audience who are either using N-able Backup or Axcient X360 Recover. Anytime I interview a vendor, my last question is always, tell me about your top secret plans for the future. And they rarely actually do. But I did ask, what's on the roadmap maybe for these products going forward? And I got some hints, which are interesting. So in N-able's case, they say they're getting a lot of input from MSPs who want the ability to spin up a recovery environment in one of the hyperscale public clouds like AWS and Azure. Sounds like that capability is coming. Today, Enable Backup is 100% focused on Microsoft 365 for obvious reasons. That's where the most urgent need is. But they're looking at other SaaS applications that they might want to expand into. In the case of Axcient, what they told me without getting too into detail is that they are looking to streamline and optimize the fail back process a little bit. It can be complicated when your production environment is ready to go again, kind of going from the recovery environment back to that initial environment. They want to make that process easier, and so that down the road in that X360 Recover product, you'll see something designed to help with that.
And Rich, you might have more luck getting top secret information if you take a cue from Lawrence and start employing the use of high energy lasers during your questioning. It might be much more forthcoming.
It's a good idea. It's a good. I have a laser pointed at your car, which I will now vaporize unless you tell me. Yeah,
it might work.
Offline. I'll give you some pointers.
Yes, yes. I like this new tactic of threatening journalism. I think that works. Folks, there's a lot more details in these stories than we're just kind of giving our opinions and touching the high level here. But if you want to read through these, you'll get a lot more information. To do that, go to channelpronetwork.com. You can find the show sheet for episode 217. We got all the links in there for you. On most devices, if you open up your description on your phone, if you're listening, the links are going to be in there for you. If you're watching on YouTube, hello again, hit the like button, ring the bell, subscribe, all that stuff. But also open up the description area on YouTube, and we put all the links for you there as well, so you can kind of read along and get all of the detail as we go. So Rich, Trend Micro is partnering with another company who was one of my favorite names, and they're going to reduce some costs and save time on what exactly?
On cyber insurance. Now, for folks out there in our audience who stay on top of the news, and if you're one of those people, good on you. You should be doing that. But they're going to think this is cheating, Rich, because this actually got announced last week, which is true. I didn't get a chance to write about this or the next thing we're going to talk about until I was on my flight home from Cancun. As regular listeners know, I was in Mexico last week.
Rub it in, Rich, rub it in.
Yeah, rubbing it in. Oh, you bet. I haven't forgotten. But I didn't get a chance to write about this until I think a couple of days after it broke, and this is the first chance I have to talk about it on the podcast, but I think it's timely, and so I wanted to kind of bring it up because it's a painful time right now to get or renew cyber insurance, as nobody listening, watching right now needs me to know. And what Trend Micro and Cowbell Cyber have done is come up with an alliance agreement that's designed to make that easier. Now, Cowbell Cyber is a cyber insurance company. Their CEO actually was on the podcast with us once upon a time. Their sort of flagship product is called Prime 100. Those are cyber insurance policies for companies with up to $100 million in revenue. The claim to fame, the sort of differentiator they say at Cowbell, is they have an artificial intelligence powered engine behind the scenes that can do continuous real-time automated underwriting and basically enable you to get a policy in 5 minutes or less, basically, they said online. But wouldn't it be better still if you could do that even faster and maybe even save some money along the way? Well, what Cowbell has done now is integrate with Trend Micro and Trend Micro's products. So as you're in that application process, if you are applying on behalf of, or if you are yourself a company that uses Trend Micro security products, the Cowbell platform can essentially import data from Trend Micro that gives it all sorts of insights and data points about the security status and what is or isn't in place at that end user. And based on having that information, knowing that it comes from a trusted source and that they can rely on it, it's not only going to accelerate the application process, but it's also, according to Cowbell, going to get you better pricing because they know you're a better risk. They're getting this information from the Trend Micro platform. As far as I know right now, this Trend is the only vendor that Cowbell is working with in this way. I have no idea actually if there are other cyber insurers that do this kind of thing. But I thought it was worth flagging at a time when I keep talking to MSPs who are, yanking their hair out, dealing with the cyber insurance companies right now. Something that makes that easier and maybe will save money because Cyber insurance prices here in the US were up 130% in the fourth quarter of 2021, according to Marsh, which is a company that tracks this kind of thing. You know, for obvious reasons, it's getting expensive. If you can save any money along the way, your customers are going to appreciate it.
Very cool. Lawrence, cyber insurance is, well, I mean, it's a necessary evil these days and something that's getting way, 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 way more expensive. What do you think? Is this something that you think is good?
I'll say good on them for actually doing risk-based pricing. That is fantastic. I know we deal with a number of cyber insurance companies, usually after a bad thing happened, and inevitably the what we hear consistently is we have no idea. It's like we're just guessing at the risk. And I know a lot of cyber insurers have tried going back to like NIST CSF to have their agents and underwriters score a company or a subject on in the CSF. I've seen the same thing with the CIS controls, but there's always been that tactical. How do you know? How do you really know what's under the covers? And man, good on them. That is great to hear. I know that there's been a lot of great movement in the adoption of security frameworks like the CIS controls, and there's been legislation around establishing safe harbor if you meaningfully implement these programs. But now, at the end of the day, I think those kind of follow the golden rule. He or she who controls the gold, makes the rules. I think that's a great example here where it's not just you saying you're doing something, but now they can trust but verify and reward those who are making the investment into to be more secure, to have better data and better security in the endpoint with better rates. That's fantastic. But to your point, Matt, it's a necessary evil these days. And frankly, I think any business, almost no matter what the size is, if they have any connection to the internet, it's irresponsible to not have a good cyber insurance policy from a trusted provider.
Are there any businesses left that don't have a connection to the internet in some way? What business would that be?
I know a few. Can't talk about a lot of them, but I can tell you that there are some in the manufacturing sector that absolutely do not have a connection to the internet.
Interesting. And I was thinking a company of like rock crushers, like guys with hammers hitting rocks or something. I mean, I'm thinking too old school.
Some very, very high tech companies I know have very, very air gapped networks that have nothing to do with the internet whatsoever, and a lot in the defense industrial complex.
Interesting. So Rich, they talk a lot about what the potential savings here. If someone wanted to kind of get involved with this, what do they need to do? How do they get better rates?
Well, I mean, I haven't actually seen how the Cowbell Cyber interface works, but I've got to assume that there's a way in the application process, where what they'll ask you, do you use or does the end user use Trend Micro products? And there's probably some way to set up a handshake, and then you step back and let the two platforms talk to each other and hopefully reap the benefits.
We can only hope. So yeah, probably not much more else to discuss on this, but it's definitely good to see that something is being done to make cyber insurance a little bit more affordable and accessible to smaller businesses. Because I know, Lawrence, you would probably attest, like a lot of small businesses are just getting priced out of cyber insurance.
They're absolutely getting priced out, or they're paying for policies that don't actually do anything, that really don't provide the right coverage. But yeah, the other thing here is, I kind of look at this in the other way, that this is really rewarding those that are taking efforts to implement meaningful security, presuming that Cowbell's AI engine is very, very smart, and can see the things that are being done. It really is a great way of rewarding those for leading the change, for making change in their businesses, and trying to make a meaningful inflection point so they have that risk transference.
Absolutely. So, folks, if you're out there listening and you think that you need more cowbell, now's the time.
I was waiting for someone to say it. I was waiting for it.
Well, I'm glad that we didn't disappoint, even if it was predictable.
I was fighting myself. I was fighting myself to bring out more cowbell, but thank you for crossing that bridge.
You're welcome. Anything I can do. So Rich, we're going to move on to our next story. This is a company we haven't talked about on the show in, I think, quite a while. But QuoteWerks is in the news. They got something that actually looks pretty cool. What's this about?
So same as the last story, broke last week. I'm finally getting a chance to talk about it now. I wrote about this on the plane home from Cancun.
We know that you were in Cancun. We know.
Just I couldn't recall if I mentioned that before or not. But,
what's the weather? What's the weather where you are right now?
You know what? I'm in Seattle right now, and it's exactly what you expect it to be in Seattle right now. And yeah, not as good as Cancun, but
you have all the justification for an escape to Cancun then, because you came out of Seattle. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So the vendor you were referring to there, Matt, is QuoteWerks. Very popular product in the quoting, channel quoting area. And in fact, I looked it up for purposes of this story, and we do our Readers' Choice Awards every year. We ask our readers favorite products in different categories, and QuoteWerks has won 7 out of the last 8 years in the best quoting software category. So a lot of folks in the audience familiar with the product. They introduced, technically it's a new product, but you have to be a QuoteWerks user in order to use it. So it's almost like an add-on or a module for QuoteWerks in my mind. But they're calling it Vendor RFQ. And basically the motivation behind it is, there are tools out there that you can use to get pricing information from suppliers. And distributors in particular tend to be pretty good about this. But the average ChannelPro is working with, dozens, hundreds. There are thousands of vendors out there, most of which do not provide automated real-time pricing information. So you might be able to get pricing information, but you don't know if that's completely accurate. And then, in order to check on that, maybe negotiate customized pricing, there's going to be a lot of email interaction, telephone interaction with the vendor. It's going to be highly inefficient. So, I mean, if you go out to 3 vendors, say, and ask for quoting information on a particular product, and you do it via email, you've got 3 different email threads going. You have to be the sort of integration point that pulls all that data together somewhere. So what QuoteWerks has done is create a product called Vendor RFQ. You go into that interface. You say, in the case of my example, I want to get a bid from these 3 vendors. The system spits out an email to those 3 vendors. The vendor, gets that email. They can see that it's from you. They know that it's from a trusted source. There's a link in that email that they can click to provide the information that you asked for. So they're not going to have to go to a website and log in. They're not going to have to create an account anywhere. They're also not going to just sort of send you a one-off email. They're going to use this interface that was made available to them when they click the link. They're going to provide the information that you asked for. If they need information from you, they can do that through this interface. If they want, or you want to commence negotiations, you can do that very easily through this interface. And then the Vendor RFQ tool is collecting that information from the 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 vendors you're getting quoting information from, and consolidating that in one place for you, so that you're not placing a million phone calls, you're not sifting through a million emails, you're kind of consolidating all that information that you are collecting in one place. Like I said, you've got to be a user of QuoteWerks Desktop Corporate in order to take advantage of this product. QuoteWerks is the price is $20 per user per month, and there is a reserved concurrency licensing model. You don't necessarily have to buy a seat for everyone who does quoting at your company. You can buy a smaller number of licenses and have people share it.
Well, that's nice of them. You don't see that much these days.
No, but these guys have always been so plugged into the channel, and my firm has used QuoteWerks for a lot of years, and they're where they need to be. They are always where they need to be. It's great to see. But yeah, to your point, that you don't see that kind of licensing model very often, where you don't have to buy a license for absolutely everyone that touches that part of the product.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, so if you are a QuoteWerks user, you're the perfect person to kind of chime in on this. What do you think? Is this something that excites you? Is this going to make
it
voting
is?
easier?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, in Rich, it was funny in reading this article that you put together. Where were you coming back from when you put this together?
I believe that was Mexico.
Mexico. All right. I was thinking like somewhere up north, but no. I was really surprised to see what 88,000 people are using QuoteWerks. It's incredible. And these guys are once again right where they need to be in the channel. This is absolutely a pain point. You have that kind of uncertainty in the pricing, and there's have to have 15 different communication threads. I mean, I stay far away from that. I let those that are skilled in sales and product procurement do that, because they're much better at it than I. But it is still absolutely a pain point. And again, good on them for being where the ball is going to be, and addressing a pain point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lawrence, for the record here, who deserves to go to Cancun more? Seattle, Washington, Northern Illinois.
I'm going for Seattle in February.
Really? It was like 0 degrees last week, and you think he deserves to go to Seattle?
But there's I've spent a little bit of time in Seattle in the winter, and it's not the cold, right? Because I will say I have family from the upper Midwest, and you're a hardy group of people. You are a hardy group of people, and sub-freezing temperatures I don't know has ever stopped anyone from doing something outside. But Seattle is like gray, gloomy, rainy, dreary. It's barely light, and it's noon. It's a different world there.
I've been called a lot of things. I don't know if I've ever been called hardy, but I'll take that. And folks, we also know that
I have much respect for anyone who can live in a climate that going outside in the winter with the wrong attire on could be fatal.
Very true. Very true. We also know that Rich paid you to be on his side, so that's a Rich, moving on. That's going to wrap up for the news. But we've got one more story we're going to talk about. It's a good one. It's about IT documentation, and this is a pretty cool article. Rich, tell us about it.
Yeah, it is a cool article, and it's another one of these timely things, because I think it raises an issue that doesn't get discussed maybe as much as it should be. So we're referring to an article that was actually contributed to ChannelPro by Nadir Merchant. He is the general manager in charge of the IT Glue division at Kaseya. And they, Nadir and his folks approached us offering to write about this topic for us. And I was all over it, because there are all sorts of really great, smart reasons why you need to be thorough about documentation. But as this article points out, one of those reasons is that when it comes time to get into an M&A conversation, if you are selling your business or if you are merging with another company, having really good, thorough, clean documentation is going to make your business more valuable. So, again, you're going to be more productive. You're going to be more profitable if you're using documentation software and you're keeping your documentation up to date and complete. You're also, and because you have done all those things, you're going to be more valuable potentially to an acquirer or a merger partner as a result. And this goes beyond documentation. One of the things you need to do and think about at the very beginning of the process, when you start thinking about a sale or an exit or whatever it is make sure that the data in all of your core systems is complete and clean. Go in, you want to have really good, solid accounting records, for example, because they're going to get scrutinized. And so you need the people who go in there to look around to be impressed by how solid your accounting numbers are. You want the records in your PSA to be complete, up to date, impressive as well, for the exact same reason. And very much documentation is part of that story. So it's just something to be aware of. There are both short-term and potentially longer-term costs to not being thorough in these core platforms that you rely on when it comes to selling your business down the road.
And Lawrence, it makes sense, right? This is just as much a discussion about documentation as it is business maturity, right? Because if you're a more mature business, you're probably going to be doing better documentation and therefore worth more. But I'd love to get your take on how important you also believe this is at all levels.
One of the things that stood out to me in this article was Nadir's point of a centralized source of experience, I am very fortunate to be here in Charlotte, where we have quite a few large banks that are headquartered, and I am amazed at how these huge enterprise businesses that employ tens of thousands of people can take a regular person off the street that has no experience in their systems, and in such a short order have them up and running and performing the same way everyone else in that same job function performs, delivering the same customer experience, the same outcome. And it has always just impressed me. Some of my background is working for a large organization that is known for its customer service and its experience, and it's not by accident. And so Nadir's point that he made in this article of having like the centralized source of employee experience, I think is so relevant and true in the MSP space, because how often do we have that one technician who knows XYZ customer systems better than anyone else, and every ticket that ends up getting routed to that one technician, and if anyone else touches that customer, well, yeah, your mileage may vary. Or the customer is not happy. And being able to record that and document that in a single place, making it easy. That's one thing I'll say that these guys at IT Glue have done a great job with is making the accessing and referencing information easy. From my little experience with it, it's incredibly important. But then to your point, Matt, business maturity, doing the same thing more than once the same way. It's hard, especially when you're dealing with different skill sets, different personalities, different people, different conditions. I think in the MSP space, I'd like to say that we're the last mile. We're the last mile in delivering very advanced technologies into customers. So you end up with people trying to do that, and they have a few different ways of doing it. So this is a great development of, right? Yeah, put it into one place, do it the same way. Not only does it make the not just your technical staff, but administrative, sales, communications, Marcom, everyone's life gets easier, but you get to gain some advantage in M&A, or just making the business run more efficiently.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot of stuff in here in the article that kind of talks about this, and rather than kind of dive too deep into it, why don't we just send folks to ChannelProNetwork.com, find this article, or go to the show sheet, and you can put all the links there. I talked about that earlier, and go check it out. There's a lot of good information here. Definitely something that everyone should consider, especially if you're not taking documentation seriously. There's a lot of ammunition in here on why you should be and why it's important. So go and check that out. With that, we are going to take a break, but we've got an awesome interview coming up ahead with Grayson Milbourne. He's the Security Intelligence Director at Webroot. It's going to be a fantastic discussion about current threats, countermeasures, and things that's going on in the security landscape. And all stuff that you need to know. It's going to be great. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. A little history lesson for you. In January of 1999, a computer worm called Happy99 was one of the first viruses to rapidly propagate by email. When executed, it would display a window of animated fireworks and wish the user a happy new year. Today's threats, unfortunately, are far more severe. But fortunately, the tools to protect us against those threats have become increasingly more powerful. And here to talk about the very latest threats and countermeasures is Grayson Milbourne, Security Intelligence Director at Webroot. Welcome, Grayson.
Hey, happy to be here, Matt. Thanks.
Great to have you on the show. I bet you long for the days when computer viruses were just trying to be nice and say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yeah, those days are long gone, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, so back in the day, before they discovered that they can hold data ransom and make tons and tons and tons of money off of it. So I'm really glad that you're here. Please take a couple minutes and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do at Webroot.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a longtime Webroot employee. I've worked here for over 17 years, and I spent a lot of my career as a threat analyst, basically studying malware, reverse engineering it, and embedding that information into our products so that we protect against those types of threats. And over the years, I kind of climbed the ladder a little bit and got a little bit more involved in public speaking and thought leadership, and spent some time working with our marketing department to really help us align our what I call the say-do ratio and ensure that what we're talking about is actually how we're doing it on the back end. And that's where I work today now in the product side of the team to kind of be a liaison between the threat engineering team and the product team to ensure that we keep our focus on changes we see in the threat landscape to try to keep pace with those developments so that our products are effective against the threats that are relevant today.
So 17 years in the cyber crime, cyber threat world, you've seen it all. I mean, I was kind of making a little joke about the Happy 99, but that was not far before when you really stunk your teeth into this
I mean,
industry.
there was no Windows 7 when I began. We were all still working on XP and IE6 and the good old days of just vulnerabilities galore everywhere. And it's great to see today how much more secure operating systems are at first, because Windows has obviously a very core role in the security that they can provide. And but then just yeah, it's been a wild ride, right? The threats back then versus the threats today and the tactics they use, it never stops moving. And I think that's why I still today am really excited and passionate about working within cybersecurity.
So if you could look back and pick like two or three major viruses, malware, milestones that really that were really a big deal and changed the world, which one, or particularly challenging for you from a security analyst perspective, what ones would you pick?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to pick from. I think some of the first web injection exploits, things like Zeus and the first versions of this Trojan going back to 2006, 2007. Again, the world was starting to get online, and we were starting to shift to a digital e-commerce experience, online banking, and this opened the door for a lot of new creative ways to kind of get a man in the middle of the browser and have overlays that and we saw this attack all sorts of different things from like eBay and having fake listings that you would buy, but the listing actually wasn't real. It was just rendered on your system while you're visiting that one page. Similarly to bank login pages that would extract extra information. But to me, I thought those were like a really pivotal point in the monetization of cybercrime, in that we saw a lot even in your example, a lot of the earlier threats were the monetization was tough, and they were either doing it through like ad fraud or click fraud. And so when they started realizing that, hey, we can just start stealing people's information and do financial-based impersonations and or just trick people outright, that was sort of, I think, the beginning of where criminal activity saw the benefit of turning digital as well. So that was really, I think, one of the first ones. And then, of course, I mean, you can't not talk about ransomware. And since its emergence in 2014, 2015 timeframe to today, really, like it's only increased in prevalence, and the skill to enter in cybercrime as a service or ransomware as a service. Really, what we see is just an expansion and a new attraction of talent, and it doesn't even have to be talent, just interest in participating in cybercrime. Sadly, it's never been easier to get involved today. And so I think I've, just watching things pivot from it being kind of that elite crowd of people who wanted to hack and wanted to discover these things to where we are today, where, affiliate-based models are where we see the vast majority of attacks occurring through, and far fewer being orchestrated by the actual leaders of these affiliate programs.
Yeah, wow. And so you have a front row seat for a long time on all of this horrible stuff and seeing people get exploited and damage being done. What do you do to unwind after a long day, like to not like you're smiling, like if I was in your position, like I don't think I could smile ever again.
That's an important thing, and I think work-life balance has helped me. I won't lie, I kind of hit a wall several years ago and needed to take some time off, and I think it was just that, in that I was really trying to give it my all the time, and I burnt out. And I think other people certainly have experienced this. And so for me, like aviation is a passion of mine. It's actually what I wanted to do initially in my career. The world didn't work out that way, and 15 years later, I went back and got my pilot's license. And so I like aviation. I live in Colorado, and we have fantastic mountain weather here, and so I make a point to get outside often. I love skiing, and so making sure that I prioritize things that aren't stressful and bleak sometimes, and that are fun and exciting is super important, especially if you work in a stressful career like this one.
For sure. And so do you have your own plane, or do you still go up and fly off?
No, I have like an early retirement plan of being a flight instructor. So I'm working towards getting my commercial license. Right now I'm working on my instrument rating. And when it comes to plane ownership, the insurance rates are astronomical until you have your commercial license. And so it's just not worth it, but it's definitely a long-term dream of mine.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so Lawrence, do you want to chime in on past cyber threats that stood out to you?
It's fascinating, right? Grayson, some of the points you made are so true. Like I remember being in a large cybersecurity conference with a few thousand of my closest friends when one of the Drydex gang was brought in, and the first time that corporate America really was exposed to a highly targeted, highly sophisticated threat actor doing these amazing web injections and being contextually accurate. And you could have heard a pin drop in that room. And I remember in that moment thinking, it all just changed. The rules of the game just changed. So it's fantastic. And I didn't realize that you were a pilot. I'm actually kind of pursuing that same path. Started with UAV, and I found that the same thing about plane ownership was financially a daunting prospect. But a number of years ago, spent some time in Alaska, and it was incredible how it was like more people have pilot's license than driver's licenses, and I was like, all right, so it's a possible thing. So. But no, it is like the sophistication of the threat actors, especially here, like in the channel. My background is in larger organizations and enterprise and DoD, DOE. The threat actors were always like savvy. They were always really, really smart there. But then all of a sudden now, in the channel now, in the SMB space, in the state and local government space. That is those same threat actors are they still have the same playbooks, and they're still just as effective because none of the there's not been all of that pain that enterprise has already suffered that has really percolated down here yet. So that and just the vernacular. I was one of the things that as you were talking about that, I was like, these words we're talking about are now the common vernacular, right? It's not just the blinking lights anymore. It's web injection and ransomware and threat actors, a whole new universe, and one that it's frankly exciting to be part of. What I see as kind of an inflection point in this. And I had a question, Grayson, if you would
sure,
allow me.
Of course.
You have such a unique view at a perspective of this industry from, at Webroot, right? I mean, that's, you as a company, Webroot's been on the front of this for so long. And to your point, you have such longevity. As you kind of look in the continuum of where the attacks are happening and really the effective controls to mitigate those attacks, do you see that there is an inflection point in that the good guys are starting to gain some ground, or do you still see that the bad guys are outpacing the good guys, particularly in the channel space? Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, yeah. So I think one of the cool things is, and I think we're getting ready to release here in about a month. We generate an annual threat report. And kind of just to give some context around this is that this isn't a global threat report. This isn't looking at like telemetry from all sources. It's really looking at our own customer telemetry. And so understanding how often we encounter malware threats, how often users are actually visiting a phishing site that we prevent them from accessing. And a lot of telemetry around that. And so we've been doing this now since I think 2013 was our first one. So geez, maybe this is year 9. But each year we improve upon it. And what was interesting to see was kind of going up into 2015 was sort of the peak year for where we saw the most malware on endpoints. And again, our customer base is largely like we're about a 50% consumer and 50% SMB. And that's beneficial for us because our technology is really based at putting the user's device at the core of our data collection efforts and our telemetry collection efforts. And this again is because we watched how malware authors have leveraged polymorphism and other techniques to really make it difficult to discover their threats once they've attacked an environment. What they're introducing is going to be new and unique on a per PC basis. And so our visibility gives us fantastic telemetry in such that even if only one customer sees a threat, we still have visibility of that one threat on that one system, that one time. And so since this is sort of how we understand the file ecosystem of good applications, of bad applications such as malware, but what it allows us to understand is the prevalence of their encounter on a global scale. And we divide it between the consumer side and the business side. And what we've really seen is that since 2005, 2006, that was sort of at the peak. And we've really seen somewhat of a decline in application-based malware ever since. So what that tells me is like, well, a couple of things are happening. One, Windows has made some really big improvements. And when we saw XP, obviously, to Windows 7, significant security enhancements. Windows 7 is old now, right? It's been end of life for over 2 years. Windows 10 and now Windows 11 are the future. And so like we've seen Windows improvements along with hardware improvements improve the security or the easeability of vulnerabilities within Windows have decreased significantly. The other thing we've seen is improvements in our own technology as far as like upstream detection and stopping things before you get to that layer of actual infection at the endpoint. And so, things like security awareness training and education actually goes a really long way in preventing a user from doing that one stupid thing that begins like a whole nightmare of events. If you can just have a bit more awareness that there are a lot of scams out there, there's a lot of easy ways to get duped. Even IT professionals get duped. And so that's also contributed. And I think that, probably the biggest factor is that we've recently seen, a huge pivot in the threat actor ecosystem to move away from unique applications. So like they don't want to put malware on the system if they don't have to. Living off the land-based attacks and using built-in Windows functionality to perpetrate your attack is an increasingly common thing that we see. So much so that Windows has even, or Microsoft has even begun the process of deprecating WMIC, which is just a super powerful utility that like, why does every user need to have access to, Windows like management interface to control policy? And same thing with PowerShell, right? We see PowerShell exploited, probably the number one, what we call living off the land binary, but, local users or limited users shouldn't even have PowerShell available to them on the system. So I guess like a long-winded answer to your question, but I do see improvements, right? Like our data shows us that customers who embrace a cyber resilience strategy and have a layered approach with starting with sort of like, your data and understanding the value of your data so that if it doesn't have to be ransomware, it could be a hardware failure, it could be a malicious employee, it could be, a bad mistake, lots of different reasons can impact that, but, understand your data, educate your users, protect your network and your endpoints, and occasionally run a fire drill, right? So that you know that all of these protections you put in place actually work when the time comes. What we've seen within the data given to us by our users is a positive trend.
What you're saying is that the Nigerian prince is not going to reach out to people? Right?
He still tries, but I think people are just more savvy to that. And the trouble with it is like the threat landscape moves very quickly, and we see this like with rapid shifts and trends and what targets phishers use to lure their victims in with. And whatever major news story occurs, you can guarantee within minutes. Oftentimes these things are sort of automated to track Google Trends to see what's really popular, and then people have a thirst for knowledge. And COVID obviously it really exploited this, and we saw just tremendous amounts of phishing activity and scams and lures associated to people's desire to want to know, right? And how do we learn something, right? We go online, we go to Google, we type it in, we hit enter, and we start like clicking on things, and it's remarkably easy to spider Google's results and get yourself into the top 20, and then all of a sudden you can be on a really convincing page that might elicit you to click on something else. And so I think it's important to with respect to like security awareness training, a lot of other industries have compliance for security, right? Like PCI DSS, right? Like payment card systems, right? Like, okay, I touch a credit card, I interact with this once a year, I have to take a course and get my acceptance. And that's like, okay, every year, like how much does interacting with payment card information change year over year? Not much, right? It's the same thing. And a once a year approach is sufficient to understand best practices. Unfortunately, cybersecurity is not a slow industry, and we see a lot of pivots and changes of tactics that require people to be aware of what's relevant now. And so I think, like that in itself really goes a long way if you invest in it, and it's typically not as expensive as even just endpoint. So education, I think, has really gone a long way. And again, kind of to Lawrence's point, right? Like the vernacular we use today, 10 years ago, these terms, people are like, wait, what? And now, my mom's even like, tell me more about Toofah. And I'm like, what? Oh, 2FA. Okay. Well, like, I'm glad. Thank you. Like, I'm glad you asked me about it because, people want to be secure. And I think they just need to understand the risk. And if they understand the risk, then they take the appropriate actions to protect themselves. And businesses are really no different.
Grayson, earlier on, you were talking about affiliate models and how you're seeing more of that. And it reminded me of a conversation we had in the podcast a few episodes ago with an MSP who joined us on the show. And he said one of the things that he's seeing is that in ransomware-as-a-service in particular, it's getting easier and easier for people, even without very much knowledge, technical skill, knowledge of security techniques. These interfaces are so powerful and automated, and there are so many different sort of services you can tap into that almost anybody can kind of get into that business these days if they want to. So I guess my questions would just be, first of all, is that what you're seeing at Webroot and OpenText? And if so, what do you expect that means going forward?
Yeah, so this is really an expansion of something I started following several years ago, which is just cybercrime as a service. That's what I called it at first, and this is really just the proliferation of websites that offered support to aspiring cyber criminals, right? It's what do you need help with? We're here to help you, and I think this is one of the big advantages that the cybercrime ecosystem has that the cybersecurity ecosystem is failing at still, and it's improving, but it's collaboration. And we think about cybercrime, these people are all on the same team. And we think about cybersecurity, we're for-profit companies, and we have our own proprietary technology and patents on how we do things, and we're all sort of working against each other towards the same goal, as opposed to the cybercrime actors who are all working together towards that same goal. So that has certainly an impact. with respect to like how this has matured, right? So we saw cybercrime as a service sort of pop up initially as, here's a quick way to buy access or buy remote access or buy stolen credentials or sell captured data. And it's matured into, well, let me have remote access as a service. And now that we have ransomware, now it's ransomware as a service. And the goal here again is just to recruit aspiring criminals, right? And to make it the barrier of entry very easy. Like you need no programming experience, right? Like all you need is a wallet and a little bit of effort. And it's not difficult to find, where to buy remote access, where to buy the Trojan that you then deliver that then pulls down the ransomware sample. There's plenty of guides and people for a really small amount of money. I mean, we're talking like less than $100 for a lot of these services to assist you with that process. And when it comes to like ransomware as a service, I mean, we've actually seen some pretty stiff competition between different ransomware as a service providers to capture the biggest part of the market, right? For them, the more that they can attract, the more successful they're going to be because they're taking 30%. Oh, but if you infect 100 or more PCs, well, knock it down to 20%. Infect 1,000, it's only 10%. Like, so they have like a really smart business model, and then they have a really good development team on the back end. And so these products are only as good as their ability to evade detection. And so we see a lot of development aimed at, basically recompiles, rebuilds, things that that make it challenging, or at least require a new initial discovery to protect against. And so what I really expect to see is that this is going to continue to proliferate because what we've seen, again, in the ransomware space is a continued move down market. And there's a couple of factors that draw into this. Well, I think the first that we saw in the last year, which I was so thrilled to see, is that there was finally some repercussions for participating. And we saw a coordinated efforts between 12 different nations to take down the Emotet botnet. Unfortunately, if you take something down and you don't arrest people, odds are that it's just going to come back. And we see this time and time again. So we saw this also with our evil. Again, they've sort of been back, and I think ultimately the like attacks on these big corporations or things that make the news, like the Kaseya attack, the Colonial Pipeline attack, right? Like those have repercussions, and now they've been felt. And so what we're seeing is a move downstream into smaller and smaller businesses. And there's actually much more businesses in the SMB space than there are in the Fortune 2000, right? So, that combined with recruiting aspiring cyber criminals, to me says we're going to see a continued down market move to smaller and smaller businesses. Who again, like it doesn't matter if you get like a $1 million payday. I'd rather get 10 $100,000 paydays at a fraction of the risk of going after something that might then make me a target for law enforcement.
I want to follow up on something that you said there it's been on my mind a lot. I would say the last 6 months or so. You were talking about the importance of collaboration, which just kind of reminds me about the bigger picture story of, well, what do we need to do to really get on top of this issue? I remember what first brought this up, and I get, I receive security related research studies, multiple ones like every day. But around about last October, I got one from Checkpoint. They'd gone out to like 300 companies, and it was like over 60% of those companies had been hit by ransomware. And I sort of thought to myself, if over 60% of the banks in this country had been robbed in the last year, it would be this enormous national crisis, and they would be in the Situation Room in the White House. Ransomware, it's doing over $1 trillion of financial damage a year. I mean, lives are being lost, hospitals are getting hit, and people are dying. So it's not as if there's no awareness of the issue. It's not as if nobody is working towards addressing the issue, but it doesn't feel like the urgency, the effectiveness is there. So I'm going to give you master of the universe powers here and what needs to happen that's not happening that would enable us to make some headway?
So I think this is a really complex issue. And I think part of it is that we've known that data privacy is important, and GDPR, for example, really shifted the spend that companies put towards ensuring that their data was properly stored and secured. Oddly enough, it also seems like GDPR is like the favorite tool that ransomware actors then threaten you with once they've compromised your environment, to say, hey, we've just taken your data and we're going to leak it if you don't pay us. And by the way, here's some recent GDPR fines against companies who had their data leaked by us. So do you want to pay once to us and we'll keep it quiet, or do you want to pay twice or potentially 3 times, depending on the severity of the fine? And so, I think like the goal is to make it better, right? So I think GDPR had its sights in the right direction, but its implementation and impact hasn't really netted the results that they were aiming for. So how do we fix this, and like how do we make it better? And I think there have been some better or new improvements. And so in the United States we have CISA now, which is our cybercrime response team, and they've actually really stepped their game up in the last 24 months to create guidelines, best uses practices, like contact information if you've been compromised. Unfortunately, what we see is that a lot of times people do not want to disclose that they've been compromised, right? It's bad business if you say, I suffered a cyber security incident. But what we're starting to see in different countries is legislation being brought forward. And even here in the United States, actually just yesterday, they voted to approve a disclosure legislation that basically forces people in critical industries to disclose these types of attacks. Which I found interesting is that they also wanted you to disclose if you made a payment. It's not like they're trying to stop you from making the payment. They just want to know that it happened. And so I think part of the problem is removing the stigma that, hey, I got compromised, and so I should be shamed. And I think aviation actually has done this fantastic. If you look at the NTSB, aviation learns from everybody's mistakes. And I think in cybersecurity, nobody wants to admit they made a mistake. And so we have everybody making the same mistake, nobody wanting to admit that they've made that mistake, and nobody's learning from each other's mistakes. In aviation, the reason that we fly safely, safer than driving to the airport, is because from every mistake we've ever made in aviation, a really good investigation, a non-pointing finger approach of learn and improve for for everybody. So I think these are some of the hurdles, right? Like I don't have the magic wand to fix it or have like the perfect solution, but I think it begins with a more collaborative approach within the cybersecurity side of things to share experiences. And then I think, again, pressure, right? Like we have to continue offensive pressure against these organizations. You can't have cybercrime, right? Again, like if 60% of the banks were robbed, people would be up in arms. We have to go after the threat actors and not take down their infrastructure. We have to put people in jail. And to that effect, again, the FBI doubled to $10 million is now the bounty for Maxim Yukabets, who's the guy behind Zeus and Drydex and more recently, some of these like Conti and ransomware families that are most prevalent. But I mean, like a $10 million bounty. I mean, I remember it was 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. 10 years have gone by, right? Like justice isn't being done.
I think that also speaks to the difficulty in that. Because you're right. Like FBI, I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have an amazing FBI field office. Right? We have amazing people. The FBI in general. I was just doing an InfraGard event yesterday, and amazing people are trying to solve this problem, but it's a tough problem. And so, I think that's a great point. We have this big bounty, but these guys are netting what 1.7 billion a year.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some groups retire. They're like, we've stole 200 million, and we're hanging our hat up. Like, thank you for the money, and we're done. So, yeah, and the money continues just to grow, right? All we've seen is ransom demands increase over time. I think in the SMB space, it's now the median is somewhere over $100,000, which, that's not a insignificant expense, right? And they often know what you're capable of paying, and often, like ransomware is always like the last stage of an attack. You'll be compromised. They'll understand your network topography. They'll do some research into your finances and what you're capable of paying. Do you have cyber security insurance? And then the ransom comes out, right? So it's Yeah, it's a problem that unfortunately isn't going to get better until there's a pretty significant change in our approach to tackling it.
So that was a really big question, big topic. I'm going to take it down to something much more focused. Because about 2 months ago, Log4j was all over the news. Everybody was talking about it. It's not being discussed nearly as much now, but that doesn't mean the danger is over. So, I mean, what is the state of play right now with Log4j, and what is your anticipation going forward?
Yeah, I mean, vulnerability discovery is, again, I could talk about this for a while, and maybe I'll start by saying, we can expect more and more vulnerabilities within software to be discovered as time goes forward. We're in a really bad spot with this right now because we have multiple opposing forces after those same vulnerabilities. And we see things like bug bounty programs to try to responsibly disclose these things. Google just doubled their remote code execution bounty for Chrome to $200,000 from $100,000. But if you think about it, that's still not a lot of money. And when you have governments actively trying to discover vulnerabilities, and you have cybercrime or organized cybercrime also discovering these things, paying $100,000 or $200,000 for something that could exploit 1 billion different possible PCs is really a very small amount of money. And even for companies like Google or Apple or all different software companies, right? I think what we've created is a bidding war, and we know nation states are trying to hoard these things for their cyber arsenal. We've seen how the NSA was hacked and these things were leaked, and we have Eternal Blue and a lot of nightmares since. But going back to Log4j, right? So this is just another example of vulnerable software, and I think that's just it's an unfortunate reality that software is difficult to create in a vulnerable free way. But with respect to Log4j, obviously it was massive because Java brags about being on 3 billion plus devices. And I find it interesting that about a year ago, they started pivoting towards, hey, instead of updating Java, if you're not using it, uninstall it, right? Like, what kind of business model says, okay, we've actually already got all of the PCs. Now we realize that we're actually a risk to those PCs. So if you don't use it, please uninstall us. Like, I think that's crazy. But the reality is, right, like Java was everywhere and still really is everywhere. And so it was great to get the attention. And I think all of the, or I shouldn't say all, but a vast majority of the popular public facing applications have been patched. The problem is that probably only accounts for 10% of where the vulnerability exists. And it's going to be in these more nefarious places where perhaps it's like somebody's gotten a foothold into your internal network, and now they discover that, hey, oh, your file server is running this application that's vulnerable to Log4j. You didn't patch it because the guy who set it up doesn't work here anymore. You're a small business, and you're not aware that you're vulnerable to really a very simple remote code execution vulnerability. So I think it's not going to go away, and I guarantee we will hear about Log4j being the thing, oh, we should have fixed that we didn't know we had because it's so prevalent. So again, it's I'm not surprised to have read about that, and that won't be the last that we hear even this year about a very wide-reaching vulnerability.
Can I ask a follow-on to that, Rich?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
So, because you're spot on. What do you think that the software bill of materials? So, last year, President Biden signed an executive order that required software bill of materials to be built and disclosed. Do you think that initiative will bear fruit in requiring all the software vendors and appliance manufacturers and all of this embedded code to disclose all of the libraries that they're using in there in an SBOM?
Yeah, I think that's important because at least it gives visibility into where vulnerabilities may exist. And I think like we have a really strict policy internally about using open source code, right? And there's been an enormous attack in the last year on open source repositories and basically Trojanizing open source repositories. And who's going through and verifying like each of these commits to these open source projects, right? Like apparently it's supposed to be the community, but what we see that it doesn't happen to the proper degree of scrutiny, and the malicious packages, hundreds of them were pulled last year, right? Like from NPM to GitHub to across the board, they've really been targeted. So I think transparency is important to understand that. but I don't think that it actually moves the needle very much, because just knowing doesn't really change like your usage of these things. And if anything, it perhaps creates a roadmap for the attackers to, to see what's the most commonly used library across this platform I'm trying to attack. Maybe this is, kind of akin to a water hole attack, but, let me go after the software libraries that I know you're reliant upon and see if I can infect one of those, so that, now you have unknowingly, just by including this library in your code compilation process, have created a Trojan, and you now don't even know it, right? I mean, and so that to me is a really scary thing. And I think really like one of the more, devastating developments in tactics for cybercrime, organized cybercrime, and really I look at these as largely nation state backed, but it's going after the software distribution supply chain, right? And the Kaseya attack was a great example of this, and or even SolarWinds. I mean, they didn't know that their development process was compromised, and somebody, injected a new DLL into their Orion platform, or they added it. They compiled it with, like, they sent it out to everybody, right? Like, they infected everybody. And watching that unwind and going back to really into the mid 2019 is when the compromise initially took place. They never knew that people had remote access. The threat actors were like so careful to not trip any wires, and to very slowly, just like, they created the namespace in the DLL and they didn't put anything in it. They looked at everything else and how it was built, and they wrote a backdoor that really blended in with the coding style of other libraries within this Orion platform. And the economics of that are fantastic, right? Like, I'll spend 100 times as much to compromise one of these types of companies if I know that then it gets me a foothold into every one of their customers, right? And then where do you spider from that? Now I'm in this other company's network, and now I can do the same thing to them, and then that can spider out again. And I don't think still to this day that we've yet to realize the true implications of that SolarWinds attack. We've seen copycat types of attacks with Kaseya, and we've seen several others actually with CodeCove, and I think that it's just like the economics of it. Like, I spend $1 million 0 day on this type of attack versus going after each of those individual customers. It's like much more work, right? The economy of it just makes a lot more sense to go after somebody who's already trusted, especially a security platform. Like, you're the guys who are already trusted. You're running a system, like, you have administrative privileges. You already have keys to the castle. To me, like, those are really terrifying types of attacks. And I know internally here, it caused us to really reevaluate all of our security and access controls to our code repositories, to the development and the QA process, to the software release process. All of these things basically were evaluated, and security was greatly improved, to ensure that we wouldn't be victim to something similar. But anybody who really creates software that's widely distributed, now has to really think about, hey, is my software the problem, right?
Well, and there's so many requirements documents that I see where the requirements like unrestricted access to GitHub is pushed out by a software vendor, and customers have no choice but to say, well, yeah, okay. I mean, that's what they need. I love the fact you mentioned like Kaseya. I think as MSPs, I think the MSP community really was obviously direly impacted by that event. But I thought for sure when that happened that was going to be if you will, the inflection point that we would see the big RMM providers all like just jump in the pool and take the sales spin and just all that out and really focus on it. But it didn't seem to be that. But to your point, there are a lot of very responsible companies like yourself that jumped in and said, all right, we have to rethink this and be transparent. Though I will say the transparency, that was probably the best thing I saw from Kaseya was the transparency now from RMM providers. Like, we have a problem, we're going to fix it. But until then, you need to know this thing. So yeah, it's interesting though to hear that. I appreciate your perspective on SBOM, because
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, there's lots of things that like, especially RMM providers should mandate. And so for us, I mean, we don't have like actually an RMM, but like our admin console can control our endpoints, and you can push down agent commands to those specific endpoints. And we actually ran into this like several years ago, where an MSP partner of ours got compromised, and they were using our tool to further the infection on the devices. And so we ended up now mandating, like, you have to use 2FA. And what was happening is, right, like they got in the remote desktop, they saw the browser would cache the login, and they basically logged in with not, you know, I mean, the other thing is people should not be saving passwords in browsers. I know it's convenient, but it's so trivial, like once a threat actor is on that system, to just dump the password database and have everything instantly. But thankfully, like 2FA is a very effective measure. And so we basically force people to use 2FA. It's not an option. If you're going to have access to the admin console, you have to use more robust security. So, you know, I think that's been a positive shift since we've seen some of these types of attacks.
And one thing that you said, I wanted to go back to, and you know, just back a little bit here, but you mentioned about CISA, and you know, kind of that inflection point about 24 months ago. So first, I will make the unabashed plug for anyone that's listening to follow the director of CISA on Twitter, Jenny Sterling.
She's fantastic.
She is amazing. Right?
She really is.
Showed up to like DEF CON. I mean, really, just amazing. I would say, Rich and Matt, that might be an amazing guest for the show. Just saying. But Jen is absolutely incredible, and the number of resources that CISA has put out. One I wanted to specifically call out here because it's so relevant for this community. But the fact that they are putting a huge amount of threat intel out into the community, and a lot of practice guides. It is unlike anything I've seen, and it's, you know, our tax dollars at work in such a demonstrable way. So yeah, I'm super glad to hear that. And I also wanted to call out something that I've been able to point other MSPs to, and that is over at NIST, the NCCOE, the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. They put together a ransomware guide that was focused on the MSP community. And that is a resource out there on the NCCOE website. It's free, it's highly effective, great practice guide, and it talks about like this community, how the kind of the one-to-many relationship, how can you implement and what controls are effective. So it's amazing how all of this stuff kind of, you know, what 4 or 5 years ago we would have said, you know, that's like almost fiction.
Right.
You know, and now we're talking about state-sponsored actors and mandatory 2FA and compromising of tools, and, you know, compromising this very software that makes the tools that we use. And it's incredible. I mean, what an amazing time to be able to be a material part of the solution.
Yeah.
Lawrence, if you can shoot me a link to that resource you were just talking about, we'll put it in the show notes for the audience so that they can go check it out.
Yeah.
One last question, Grayson. I've got to get this in. It's a little bit random, but I've been desperate to ask a security expert this for weeks, and this is my first chance. Because I was watching the Super Bowl a little while back, and
you know what you're gonna ask.
You knew it was coming. An ad pops up. It's nothing but a bouncing QR code. I did not scan it. Like, I knew this code is fine. I don't know who it's from, but it's fine.
Sure.
I didn't scan it. So, first of all, am I right to be cautious about unknown QR codes? And what do you think about an ad like this Coinbase Super Bowl ad training people to just go ahead and scan a bouncing QR code?
I think it's awful. I mean, like, why not just put Coinbase.com on the website and have it bounce around, right? Like, getting people to take out their phone and to scan something that takes them to a website that, you know, that they don't know. I mean, like, QR codes should show you where you're going, but we've seen a lot of malicious use of QR codes in a lot of really creative ways, particularly around the tax season. And we've seen examples of mail-based fraud, like snail mail-based fraud from the IRS that says, hey, scan this QR code to begin your engagement with us. And it's a total fraud, right? It's like people think, oh, well, I got it in the mail. It's from the IRS, or it looks like that. I should trust it, right? And we've seen other examples of like nightclubs of stickers that are put down. You know, people will scan anything. Like, it's amazing what people will do. You're like, well, somebody would really click on that. Oh yeah, you know, absolutely. And I don't know that, like, I mean, it's again, right? It's a link to a URL. It's trying to take you someplace. You know, for Android, we sometimes see it as a link to install an app, right? So you can get a malicious application through scanning a QR code if it's not being pulled from Google Play. You know, the operating system tries to protect you. I think, like, at the end of the day, right, like QR codes are useful for a lot of reasons, because right, it's a small amount of space. Everybody has a smartphone. It's a convenient way to give information. But like, anytime you see that, you know there's going to be the malicious minds at work thinking about how can we exploit this kind of like leap of trust in that, hey, this is just going to take me somewhere that's good. So, and also I saw that, and I'm like, I'm not taking my phone out and gonna go like this around the screen to try to capture the image. I'm like, you should, like, if it were to be something, it should just bend like the QR code, or maybe like the webs. I don't know. If anything, you know, positive I think is that a lot more people are now like curious about QR codes and maybe security around it. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like an unknown link on the internet, or a link in an email. Like, should I click on that link that from somebody that seems suspicious? I mean, at least that looks suspicious. Now it can be more insidious.
Well, that's a good place to circle back around to, because it seems like whenever you have discussions around cybersecurity and threats, it really always comes back to the point that people are generally the weak link. You can have all the security in the world, armed guards around a building, dogs everywhere, a crocodile moat, but if you open the front door for somebody, they're going to get in. And that's unfortunately where it is. And the QR code example is perfect for that, because people make bad decisions, and that's often how things get put in.
Almost always, really. I mean, outside of like, I mean, we've seen some really big things with Exchange earlier, or last year. You know, there's big Exchange exploits, and people just having web servers hosting their Exchange were vulnerable. But most of the time, like 80+% of the time, it's some user-based decision that at least begets the process, right? Like, the credentials have now been captured, and then it's typically like a series of other poor security-based decisions. But I still stand firmly behind, like if you do have proper security controls in place, and you combine that with education of your users, you really go like it becomes much more difficult to compromise a well-informed and well-secured business.
Absolutely. Well, it's a good place to wrap it up. Grayson, we went a little long, but what a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for coming on. For those who want to learn a little bit more about you, get in touch with you, or learn more about Webroot, where can they go? How can they find you?
Yeah, I would just reach out to our website, webroot.com. There you'll find everything about our services and further engagement.
Awesome stuff. Check out the show notes there, folks. And with that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I think Lawrence will still be with us on the other side. We're going to have a little bit of fun and wrap up the show. So stick around for that. We will be right back. And we are back with part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. We're going to wrap up the show and talk about some different stuff. Rich, I have to say first, though, that what an amazing interview with Grayson and Lawrence. I mean, I could just sit back and just let them go, and it was a lot of really good stuff. Any highlights that you want to point out, or any takeaways?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I'll just echo what you said. I mean, this was the first time that I have met Grayson, and I kind of anticipated, given what he does, it would be an interesting conversation. But it exceeded my expectations. That was really great, and we need to keep in touch with him.
For sure. Lawrence, any highlights that you want to point out?
All I can say is he's a rock star. It's obvious. He's been doing this a long time. He knows what the heck he's doing, and he is clearly in the right seat doing some great work. So it's a great conversation. I have a feeling that we could probably kind of just hang out and geek out for some time.
Yeah, I know the time flew by too. It was very surprising how long that went, but it was all really good. I also say this is probably the first time in an interview where Rich hasn't gotten a word in the first 15 minutes. which was kind of interesting. But really good stuff. I hope everybody check that out, and definitely go back and give it a listen if you didn't get through it all, because it's really, really good stuff. So Lawrence, it's so glad to have you back here on the other side. You know what, Rich, we've been kind of running a little long, so we haven't had opportunities to play some games in a while, but I think we've got a couple of things. We'll play a little bit of 5 questions with Lawrence. That should be a lot of fun. And Lawrence is going to do a book pick for us, which I'm really excited and looking forward to. So why don't we go ahead and start? So Lawrence, I know you are familiar with this, but for those who might be new to the show, 5 questions is a game where Rich and I will fire off 5 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back and forth. We'll kind of take turns. And these questions are definitely, the stick is like we can't write them in advance. We have to think of them on the fly, and we do think of them on the fly. And they will definitely be off topic and probably ridiculous, at least the ones that I ask. So here we go. Lawrence, you ready?
As ready as I possibly can be.
All right, Rich, I'll give you the first one. Go for it.
Okay, well, I mean, we have established thoroughly at this point that you know your way around security. Have you ever done any white hat or black hat hacking?
Yes. Should I explain? Yes, absolutely.
Which?
Yes. My daughter likes to people ask her what her dad does. She says he's a hacker. And that's kind of true, right? At the end of the day, understanding the intricacies and idiosyncrasies of how systems are put together and how you have to get around them, it is ultimately hacking. So I would say, rather than white hat or black hat, I would say I am squarely in the purple space between red and blue.
So Lawrence is a living Venn diagram, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I like it. Question number 2: if you had a giant laser pointed at planet Earth, how much would you set the ransom for, and why?
Oh wow! Now there's all the technical questions. I think it might be the ransom wouldn't be monetary. I don't think the ransom would be monetary. I think that it would be experiential of some form. But all of the outlandish experiences that I can think of would have probably already been achieved if I was able to have a space-based laser pointed at planet Earth. So that's a hard one for me.
So what are you going to ask for? What's it going to be?
I am fascinated with space. So it would definitely be something outlandish, like some time on the International Space Station, or something of an equal ilk. But maybe just a ride on one of Mr. Musk's latest rockets.
I like it. Sounds good. Rich, question number 3 to you.
If you could not be in IT anymore, but you could have any other job out there that you wanted, what would that be?
Oh, I have thought about this a lot. I've been doing this a long time, and there are days that I'm done with IT. But I think like probably 75% of all of the other IT people in the world, I am an avid scuba diver. Used to be a scuba instructor, and if money were no object, and I could have any job that I wanted, it would be a professional dive bum. So probably an underwater photographer, because that is something I really, really greatly enjoy.
Interesting. All right, question number 4. Let's see, we're talking water, we're talking oceans. What is the superior seafood to eat, and how is it prepared? Go.
Ooh, the superior seafood to eat. Again, I'm going to say it is experiential, because it's based on who I am with enjoying this seafood. So it's all a matter of who, but in general, I will say a well-prepared set of Alaskan king crab legs will put to shame most other seafood, in my humble opinion.
Crab is good. Crab is good. Rich, now you live in Seattle. There's pretty good seafood up there. Do you agree, or would you go the more salmon route?
I mean, that is certainly the answer that the home team here in Seattle wants to hear from me, is that it's all about the salmon. I mean, do oysters count? Because
Yeah,
Man.
what's your score?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's probably the real answer, followed by salmon, of course.
Well, and I'll just say nothing beats Vandy Camp's frozen fish sticks. Those are always delicious, especially with tartar sauce. I'm totally kidding, by the way. That's not my superior seafood pick. Rich, question number 5 to you.
So Lawrence, what is the thing you do every day? This could be in your personal life or your work life. What's the thing you do every day that you most like and least like? So it's two things, I guess.
2 things. Oh, and I most like and I least like. All right. So I'm probably the least likely guy that at least I thought would ever love being a dad. But I love being a dad, and probably in that the best thing in my day is starting out the day, and I started a little competition with my kids around being the first kid in the kitchen, ready to start their day. So dressed, ready to go. First kid in the kitchen gets whatever treat that they want. So it is kind of like an arms race to get there first. And some of the shenanigans that come out of my kids' minds are amazing. So that's by far, what am I going to be greeted with this morning with my kids trying to get into the kitchen first. And so that's definitely the best. Now, the least, probably when my phone rings and we have someone that needs help that has had some type of cyber incident, especially another MSP, when the MSP calls and says, help, I don't know what to do. This bad thing happened to my customer, or God forbid to us. And I hate dealing with it because it's something I can completely personally relate to. And it then becomes personal, and I want to take out the bad guys. That's something that doesn't happen every day though. So that probably doesn't count. So every day, honestly, probably going to bed because I know there was more stuff that I needed to do or couldn't get to in that day. And there's only 26 usable hours in the day.
So any treat they want. What if they ask for king crab legs? Do they get that as a treat?
If they asked for that, they sure would, but I can guarantee that's not what they're asking for.
What's the most popular treat in the amongst the Cruciana children?
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. So
that's a popular one around here too, for sure.
Yeah. So, but I figure, why not start them off with ice cream first thing in the morning?
Sugar them up, send them off to school. That's what I say.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks for playing along. Always fun to ask some interesting questions and learn more about our awesome guest hosts. But Lawrence, you're an avid reader. You read a lot of books, as we know. Would love if you wanted to do a Lawrence Cruciana book pick of the week. Go.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I am going to say, with just a little bit of preface to this, the couple of things that have always been the same in this business, right? In the channel business, in the technology business, is that tomorrow isn't the same as today. So there is perpetual change, and dealing with that change, managing that change. How do you take the next thing? Like we talked about just in this show, right? You have change in big companies and their products, and how do you adapt that change and turn into a business idea, or introduce it or manage the change in that. And my bookshelf is filled with books about that. And one that recently stuck out to me was called Start Ugly. And it is, you guys can insert a title or something here, but Start Ugly. And it is a pretty quick read. I don't know, maybe 80, 90 pages, but very timely, and something I took away from that some very practical things that I've been able to apply.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll put a link to that particular book on the show notes page for people to check out. Sounds like a good read, and thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Rich, we've got a few minutes left. Why don't you tell us what we might have missed over the last week while somebody was on a plane coming back from somewhere? I wonder where.
Was it Cancun, Rich?
That sounds right. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was.
Was it warm there?
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah, did I mention I was at the beach?
Yes.
So, Rich, tell us what else we might have missed other than that important bit of news, and what might be coming up in the week ahead. And it better not be another trip to Cancun, or I'm going to HR.
Unfortunately for me, it isn't. But you know what, folks, if you want to catch up on stuff in the news that you may have not noticed, great thing to do is read our In Case You Missed It post every Friday on ChannelProNetwork.com, written by our own James Gaskin. This week, he's going to have some information for you about some product announcements out of Mobile World Congress, which happened this week. So, new ThinkPad, a new ThinkPad from Lenovo, powered by a Snapdragon processor. Actually, it's the first product of that kind from those folks. Some new ThinkBooks. A 1.3 pound mobile monitor from Lenovo, which looks kind of interesting. Some more mobile hardware from Samsung announced this week as well. Microsoft has updated its Microsoft 365 product with some small business goodies you may or may not have heard about at this point. And then James is going to have a couple of stories for you. I won't go into detail, but some interesting stories about coping with noisy neighbors. If you live in an apartment building like I do, you will maybe relate to some of these issues and some of the strategies used to deal with them. Now, next week, as we mentioned, no Channel Pro Weekly podcast. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. That's because the four of us are all going to be in Newark at the Channel Pro SMB Forum event. Actually, late next week, about just over a week from now, as we record this, the South by Southwest conference kicks off in Austin, Texas. That's going to be back in person. The HIMSS conference kicks off. That's like the healthcare technology event of the year. That gets started next Friday. And by the time that our audience is hearing from us again, we will have, it'll be just on the other side of the CompTIA Communities and Councils Forums, their CCF event in Chicago, which I will be attending with some other Channel Pro folks. And I am sure we will have some conversation on the next episode about what happened at that show.
Sounds like a not want to miss week ahead. Folks, please do come out to the Newark event. If you're anywhere in that New York metropolitan area, it's easy to get to. Come and join us, meet us in person, shake our hand. You're going to see me, Rich, and Lawrence. Come hang out. It'll be well worth it. Speaking of, Lawrence Cruciana, President of Corporate Infotech, awesome having you on. Thank you so much for being here. For those who want to learn more about you, reach out to you, get in touch with you, learn more about your business, where can they go? How can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can reach me directly on Twitter at @LCruciana, and our website, www.corp-infotech.com. And thank you guys for having me back. It's great being amongst like you bright, brilliant people. I learned a few things today, and you know, I don't get put on the spot very often, so it's great having having that thrust upon me with those questions. I appreciate that.
Always a pleasure having you on. And yes, I know we learned that Rich went to Cancun. I know. We learned.
You know, Cancun beach. That sounds like a really awful time.
Good stuff. Great show. Awesome having you on, Lawrence. It really is a pleasure having you on, and we will definitely have you on again. And I will see you in a few days, actually.
I'm looking forward to it, and I would echo exactly what you said. Come out to the event. It's going to be educational, informative, and I'm sure a lot of fun, Matt, if you have any antics up your sleeve, which you probably do.
Always do, always will. That is one guarantee. So that's it for episode 217, folks. But what can you do to make sure you don't miss 218? Subscribe to the Channel Pro Weekly podcast. We're on all the different audio platforms, Googles and Apples and Spotify's and all those. So go subscribe to us there. That way we just magically appear on your device when we got new episodes for you. If you like to watch, we are on YouTube. You can subscribe there, hit the like button, hit the bell to get notifications. There's a whole bunch of things you got to do. But also leave a comment. That's a really, really important stuff, and it really helps us helps us out and engage with us. Follow us on all the socials. And of course, channelpronetwork.com is where you need to go each and every day. Make it your homepage. There you'll find the latest articles, resources, white papers, news entries, all kinds of stuff to help you stay on top of what's going on in the industry or help you make your business better and make more money. All important stuff. Make sure you do that each and every day. And with that, we are going to wrap episode 217. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks in 2018. See you then.